The war beast's roar shattered the afternoon peace, a sound so primal and furious that every person in the frontier settlement of Thorndale dropped what they were doing and ran for cover. Every person, except Yannick Thorne, who stood his ground in the middle of the dusty road with nothing but a length of rope, and the kind of calm that came from years of working with frightened animals. The creature thundering toward him was unlike anything the settlers had ever seen domesticated. It stood nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in scales that gleamed like polished obsidian, with massive clawed feet that tore furrows in the packed earth. Its head was reptilian, crowned with curved horns, and its eyes burned with amber fire. Behind it, running at a full sprint and yelling in a language most humans would not understand, came an orc woman with desperation written across every line of her face. Yannick had been in Thorndale for only 3 months, having left his family's horse ranch in the eastern valleys after his father's death. He had come west to forget, to build something new, to escape the memories of a life that no longer existed. What he had found instead was a hardscrabble settlement where people struggled to survive, where prejudice ran as deep as the wells they dug, and where an orc woman's war beast running loose through the center of town would likely end with arrows and bloodshed. He could not let that happen. The war beast lowered its head as it charged, preparing to gore or trample anything in its path. Yannick stood perfectly still, his breath steady, his shoulders relaxed. At the last possible moment, he raised one hand, palm out, and made a low, rumbling click from the back of his throat that he had learned from the horse masters of his youth. It was not a human sound. It was the sound a mother animal makes to calm her young. The war beast's momentum carried it forward, but its head lifted slightly, confusion flickering in those burning eyes. Yannick made the sound again, longer this time, layering in a soothing rhythm. He took one slow step to the side, and the beast's charge veered, following his movement but slowing, its massive body coiling with uncertainty rather than rage. "Easy," Yannick murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nobody here wants to hurt you. Easy now." The orc woman skidded to a halt 10 paces away, breathing hard. She was tall even for her kind, probably close to 7 feet, with skin the color of spring moss and small tusks that curved up from her lower jaw. Her black hair was pulled back in a warrior's braid, and she wore leather armor that had seen hard use. Her yellow eyes were wide with shock as she watched Yannick approach her raging war beast with nothing but open hands and that strange, soothing sound. The beast swung its head toward Yannick, nostrils flaring. Its breath came out in hot gusts that smelled of meat and musk. Yannick let it scent him, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. He could see the whites around its eyes, the way its muscles trembled with adrenaline. Something had terrified this creature badly enough to snap whatever training it had received. What happened? Yannick asked quietly, not taking his eyes off the beast. The orc woman's mouth opened, then closed. When she spoke, her accent was thick, but her command of the human tongue was clear. "The blacksmith's son threw a torch at us. The flame's Grimjaw has always feared fire." Yannick felt anger flare in his chest, but he pushed it down. Now was not the time. "Grimjaw, that is his name." "Yes." Her voice shook slightly. "Please, human, if the militia comes, they will kill him. They will say he is too dangerous, that orcs should not be allowed to keep war beasts near settlements. Then we had better calm him down before they get here." Yannick took another step closer, extending his hand so the beast could smell it properly. Grimjaw's head lowered, that massive jaw close enough to bite Yannick's arm clean off. Instead, the beast's nostrils flared again, taking in his scent in long, careful draws. Yannick began to hum, a low, wordless melody his mother had sung to frightened foals. He reached out slowly and touched the side of Grimjaw's scaled jaw, just below the eye. The beast flinched, but did not pull away. Yannick's fingers found the spot where the jaw hinged, and he pressed gently, rubbing in small circles. Grimjaw's eyes began to close. "By the ancestors," the orc woman breathed. "How are you doing that?" "Every creature has places where touch calms them," Yannick said, continuing the gentle pressure. "The trick is staying calm yourself. They can smell fear, smell aggression. Right now, Grimjaw does not smell any threat from me." He glanced at the orc woman. "Come here slowly. Let him see you are calm too." She moved like a warrior, each step controlled and deliberate despite the tremor in her hands. When she reached Yannick's side, Grimjaw's eyes opened again, focusing on her. The beast made a sound, somewhere between a whimper and a growl. "He thinks he disappointed you," Yannick said. "Can you tell him otherwise?" The orc woman placed both hands on Grimjaw's snout, pressing her forehead against his scaled hide. She spoke in her own language, a series of guttural sounds that nevertheless carried clear affection and reassurance. Grimjaw's entire body began to relax, the tension draining from his muscles. Behind them, Yannick could hear the militia approaching, their boots pounding the dirt. He turned to see a dozen men with crossbows and spears, led by Samuel Garrett, the settlement's self-appointed captain of the guard. "Step away from that beast, Thorne," Samuel barked. "You too, orc. We are putting it down before it kills someone." The orc woman's hand moved to the axe at her belt, and Yannick saw murder in her eyes. He put himself between her and the militia, keeping one hand on Grimjaw. "The situation is under control," Yannick said evenly. "No one was hurt. The beast was frightened by someone throwing fire at him." "It ran wild through the settlement," Samuel shot back. "Could have trampled a child. These creatures have no place here, and neither do the savages who keep them." "Grimjaw is calmer than you are right now," Yannick observed, "and considerably less likely to do something stupid. Take your men and go. This is finished." Samuel's face reddened. "You have been here 3 months, Thorne. Do not think that gives you the right to. I am not asking for rights. I am telling you what is going to happen. This orc and her war beast are leaving peacefully. Anyone who tries to stop them will answer to me. And before you decide whether that is worth your trouble, remember who taught your horses not to bolt at the sound of gunfire." It was a calculated gamble. Yannick had made himself valuable to the settlement by training their mounts, and Samuel knew it. The militia captain's jaw worked silently for a moment before he spat into the dirt. "Fine. But if that thing comes back into town, I am shooting it on sight." He jerked his head at his men, and they withdrew, though not before several of them shot dark looks at the orc woman. Yannick waited until they were out of earshot before turning back. The orc woman was staring at him with an expression he could not quite read, something between suspicion and wonder. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "Because it was the right thing to do." Yannick ran his hand along Grimjaw's neck, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the scales. "And because any fool can tell the difference between a vicious animal and a frightened one." She was quiet for a long moment. "My name is Grokha, Grokha of the Stonefist clan, or at least I was until they cast me out for refusing to raid human settlements. Yannick Thorne. I run the horse ranch on the eastern edge of the settlement." He looked at Grimjaw, whose breathing had finally steadied. "Your war beast needs somewhere safe to recover, somewhere away from torches and militia. I have space in my barn." Grokha's tusks caught the afternoon light as her mouth opened in surprise. "You would let us on your land, an orc and her war beast?" "I would let anyone who needs help." Yannick gathered the rope he had dropped and began fashioning it into a loose lead. "Besides, Grimjaw and I should get to know each other better. He is a magnificent animal, and I would like to learn more about handling war beasts." I cannot pay you. Did I ask you to? Grokha looked like she wanted to argue, but Grimjaw chose that moment to butt his head gently against Yannick's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. Despite everything, Yannick found himself grinning. I think he likes you, Grokha said, and there was something in her voice that might have been the beginning of a smile. The feeling is mutual. Yannick secured the lead to Grimjaw's collar, a thick band of leather studded with iron. Come on. Let us get out of here before someone decides to be heroic. The walk to Yannick's ranch took the better part of an hour, following a rutted wagon trail that wound through stands of pine and across a shallow creek. Grimjaw walked between them, calm now, occasionally snuffling at interesting scents. Grokha moved with the easy stride of someone used to long marches, though Yannick noticed she kept her hand near her axe and her eyes on the tree line. You are watching for trouble, he observed. Trouble has a way of finding orcs in human lands, she replied. Even when we are just trying to live in peace. How long have you been in this region? 3 years. I have a homestead 2 days' walk north of here, near the river. I raise Grimjaw and 2 others for hunting and protection. Every few months, I come to Thorndale to trade furs and meat for things I cannot make myself. Her jaw tightened. Usually I can avoid the worst of the prejudice. Today was different. The blacksmith's son has a reputation for cruelty, Yannick said. Last month he was caught tormenting cats. His father paid a fine and the matter was dropped. Grokha's expression darkened. If he had done that in an orc clan, he would have been exiled or worse. We do not tolerate those who harm creatures that cannot defend themselves. They emerged from the trees to find Yannick's ranch spread out before them, a modest house of hewn logs, a sturdy barn, and several fenced paddocks where horses grazed in the late afternoon sun. It was not much, but Yannick had built most of it with his own hands, and there was a satisfaction in that. Grimjaw's nostrils flared as he caught the scent of horses. The nearest animals, a pair of mares, raised their heads and snorted nervously. Yannick made that clicking sound again, and Grimjaw settled, his predatory interest fading into curiosity. Impressive, Grokha murmured. Most horses panic at the sight of a war beast. They trust me not to let anything hurt them. Yannick led them to the barn, sliding open the wide double doors. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of hay and leather. He had 6 stalls, 3 currently occupied by horses. The others were empty, ready for use. Yannick guided Grimjaw to the largest stall, one he had built for draft horses. It was big enough for the war beast to turn around comfortably. He removed the lead and stepped back, letting Grimjaw explore his temporary home. He will need water, Grokha said, all business now. And meat. Raw is best, but he can eat cooked if necessary. At least 20 pounds today. The panic used a lot of energy. I have a spring behind the barn and venison in the smokehouse. Yannick grabbed a bucket from the wall. Make yourself comfortable. This will take a few trips. By the time he had filled the water trough in Grimjaw's stall and hauled in enough venison to satisfy a creature that size, the sun was beginning to set. Grokha had removed her armor and was brushing Grimjaw with long, practiced strokes, speaking to him in her own language. There was a tenderness in her movements that made Yannick's chest tighten unexpectedly. She looked up as he approached. Thank you for all of this. You are welcome. Yannick leaned against the stall door, watching Grimjaw tear into the venison with obvious pleasure. He really is remarkable. I have never seen anything quite like him. War beasts are bred by orc clans in the deep mountains, Grokha explained. They are a mix of several reptilian species, combined through generations of careful selection. Smart, loyal, and nearly fearless once properly trained. Grimjaw is the most gentle of my 3. You have 2 more like him, smaller, and one of them has wings. A hint of pride entered her voice. I am considered quite skilled as a beast master among my people, or I was before I left. Why did you leave? Grokha's brush stroke slowed. Because I was tired of the raiding, the endless cycle of violence between orcs and humans. My clan believed the only way to survive was to take what we needed by force. I believed we could find another path. She set down the brush and met his eyes. So far, the humans have not made that easy to believe. I am sorry, Yannick said and meant it. Not all of us are like Samuel Garrett or the blacksmith's son. No, some of you are like you. She studied him for a long moment. You move like a warrior, but you speak like a scholar. You are too young to be so calm in the face of danger. Who are you, Yannick Thorne? He had not talked about his past with anyone in Thorndale, but something about the directness in Grokha's gaze made him want to answer honestly. I grew up on a horse ranch in the eastern valleys. My father was the best horse master in 3 provinces, and he taught me everything he knew. When I was 19, raiders attacked our ranch. They killed my father and burned half our stock. Yannick's hands tightened on the stall door. I spent the next 3 years hunting them down, every last one. When it was finished, I realized I had nothing left, no family, no home I wanted to return to, so I came west to start over. Grokha was very still. You are a killer. I was. I do not want to be any more. And yet you stood between me and a dozen armed men without hesitation. There is a difference between defending someone who needs help and hunting people for revenge. Yannick pushed away from the stall. I should start dinner. You must be hungry. I should return to my homestead before dark. It is a 2-day walk, you said. By the time you got there, it would be the middle of the night. Stay. You and Grimjaw can rest, and you can head out at first light. When she hesitated, he added, Besides, I have questions about war beast training, and you owe me at least a few answers for the venison Grimjaw just ate. That surprised a laugh out of her, a rich sound that made something warm bloom in Yannick's chest. Very well. But I will help with dinner. I am not one to accept charity without giving something in return. They worked together in Yannick's small kitchen, a room that seemed to shrink with Grokha in it. She stood nearly a foot taller than him, and he was not a small man. But her movements were careful, almost delicate, as she helped him prepare a stew with vegetables from his garden and more of the venison. You are a good cook, she said, surprised as she tasted the broth. Living alone, you learn or you eat badly. Yannick added another log to the fire. Tell me about your other war beasts, the one with wings especially. Grokha's face lit up as she talked about her animals, Shadowfang, a sleek hunter built for speed, and Skyripper, the winged beast who could carry her into the air for short flights. She described their different temperaments, the challenges of training them, the bond that formed between beast and master. Yannick listened, fascinated, asking questions that made her eyes widen with surprise at his understanding. You really do care about animals, she said finally. Not just as tools or property, but as thinking, feeling beings. Of course. How else would you approach them? Yannick ladled stew into wooden bowls. My father used to say that the best trainers are the ones who learn to think like their animals, not the ones who try to force animals to think like humans. Your father was wise. He was. Yannick handed her a bowl and spoon. I wish you could have met him. He would have been fascinated by Grimjaw. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the crackling fire and the distant sounds of horses settling for the night the only noise. Outside, the last light was fading from the sky, painting the windows purple and gold. Why did you really help me today? Grokha asked suddenly. You could have let the militia handle it, would have been safer for you. Yannick considered the question carefully. When I was hunting the raiders who killed my father, I became something I did not recognize. Hard, cold, angry all the time. By the time I finished, I had forgotten what it felt like to do something just because it was right, without thinking about revenge or justice or any of that. He met her yellow eyes across the table. When I saw you running after Grimjaw, trying to protect him from a town full of people who wanted him dead, I saw someone fighting for something that mattered. I guess I wanted to help with that, to remember what it feels like to be on the right side of things. Grokha was quiet for so long that Yannick thought he had said too much, revealed too much. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Her palm was warm and calloused, her fingers strong. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing us, for not seeing monsters." Yannick turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. The gesture felt natural, right, even though he barely knew this orc woman. "You are welcome." They pulled apart after a moment, both suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. Grokha cleared her throat and stood, gathering the bowls. "I should check on Grimjaw before sleeping. Where would you like me to rest? There is a guest room upstairs, small, but the bed is comfortable." Yannick stood as well. "I will get you some blankets." That night, lying in his own bed, Yannick found himself staring at the ceiling and thinking about yellow eyes and the way Grokha's face had transformed when she smiled. It was ridiculous. He had known her for all of a few hours. But there was something about her directness, her strength tempered with gentleness, that called to something deep in his chest. He finally fell asleep to dreams of scaled wings and amber fire. Yannick woke before dawn, as was his habit, and dressed quickly in the pre-dawn darkness. He expected to find Grokha still asleep, but when he came downstairs, she was already in the kitchen, somehow having managed to start the fire and prepare tea. "I am an early riser," she said by way of explanation. "Old military habits. You served in an orc war band." "For 5 years, starting when I was 16. She poured tea for both of them, the fragrant steam rising in the cool air. "I was good at it. Too good, perhaps. That is part of why I left. I was tired of being good at killing." Yannick accepted the cup, their fingers brushing again. "I understand that feeling." They took their tea outside, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to rose gold. The horses stirred in their paddocks, and from the barn came the sound of Grimjaw's contented rumbling. "He is happy here," Grokha said. "I can tell by the sounds he makes." "He is welcome to stay as long as he needs." Yannick glanced at her. "You both are." Grokha smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I have to return to my homestead. Shadowfang and Skyripper need me and I have crops to tend, but—" She hesitated. "Perhaps I could visit sometimes. Bring the others to meet you, if you are interested in learning more about war beast training." "I would like that very much." They stood there in the growing light, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. Yannick wanted to say something more, something about how the ranch felt less empty with her in it, how he had not realized how lonely he had been until she arrived. But the words felt too large, too soon. Instead, he said, "Let me make you breakfast before you go. And I will pack supplies for your journey." Grokha helped him prepare a hearty meal of eggs, bacon, and fresh bread. As they cooked, she taught him a few words in her language, the words for fire, friend, and thank you. He taught her some of the hand signals he used to communicate with horses from a distance. After they ate, Yannick filled a pack with food, including several large cuts of venison for her war beasts. Grokha protested at first, but he insisted. "You will need your strength for the journey. And this is payment for the lesson in war beast handling." "You mean for standing still while Grimjaw charged you and making clicking sounds?" Her tusks caught the morning light as she grinned. "Hardly seems like expert knowledge. It kept him from being shot full of crossbow bolts." "I would say that is expertise enough." They walked together to the barn, where Grimjaw greeted Grokha with obvious affection, rubbing his massive head against her stomach. She scratched behind his ear ridges, murmuring to him in her own language. Yannick helped her secure the pack and attach the lead to Grimjaw's collar. As they worked, their hands kept finding reasons to touch, adjusting a strap here, steadying a buckle there. Each contact sent a small thrill through Yannick's chest. Finally, there was nothing left to do but say goodbye. "Safe travels," Yannick said, "and be careful on the road. Not everyone will be as understanding as I am about war beasts. I know the paths that avoid most settlements." Grokha looked down at him, her yellow eyes soft. "Yannick Thorne, you are unlike any human I have ever met. I hope we meet again soon." 2 weeks, Yannick heard himself say. "Come back in 2 weeks if you can. Bring Shadowfang and Skyripper, I would like to meet them." 2 weeks, she agreed. A smile curved her lips. "It is a promise." She leaned down suddenly and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he did not understand but felt in his bones. Then she straightened, clicked her tongue at Grimjaw, and began walking north toward the tree line. Yannick stood watching until she disappeared into the pines, a tall figure in leather armor with a war beast at her side. Only then did he realize he was smiling like a fool. The next 2 weeks passed slowly. Yannick threw himself into work, training horses, repairing fences, preparing one of his unused paddocks to accommodate larger animals. He told himself he was just being practical, that having space for war beasts made sense if Grokha was going to visit. He did not examine too closely why he spent an evening building a sturdy bench near the barn, positioned to catch the afternoon sun, or why he found himself cooking more elaborate meals than he needed, practicing dishes he might share with her. The people of Thorndale noticed his distraction. Samuel Garrett stopped by one afternoon, ostensibly to check on a mare Yannick had been training for the militia. "Heard you had an orc on your property last week," Samuel said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Briefly. She and her war beast needed a place to rest after your men nearly killed them for no reason." Samuel's jaw tightened. "That beast was a danger. That beast was frightened because your blacksmith's son threw a torch at it. If you want to talk about dangers, maybe start with the people who provoke animals and then act surprised when they react badly. You are defending an orc. I am defending common sense and basic decency." Yannick handed Samuel the mare's lead rope. "Your horse is ready. She will not bolt at gunfire anymore, and she has a steady temperament. Treat her well." Samuel took the rope, studying Yannick with an expression somewhere between suspicion and concern. "Be careful, Thorne. People around here do not take kindly to orc sympathizers. You have built a good reputation. Do not throw it away on misplaced charity. If my reputation depends on turning away people who need help, then it is not a reputation worth keeping." After Samuel left, Yannick found his hands shaking with suppressed anger. He had tried to avoid politics in Thorndale, to simply keep his head down and do his work. But something about Grokha had awakened the part of him that could not ignore injustice, that had driven him to hunt down his father's killers even when everyone told him to let it go. He realized he did not want to keep his head down anymore. Not if it meant pretending people like Grokha were monsters just because they were different. The 13th day after Grokha's departure, Yannick was in the barn grooming one of his horses when he heard an unfamiliar sound, a high-pitched shriek, followed by the rapid beat of wings. He dropped his brush and ran outside to see a creature diving out of the sky, scales glinting like polished steel in the afternoon sun. Skyripper was smaller than Grimjaw but no less impressive, with a serpentine body and wings that stretched easily 15 feet from tip to tip. The war beast landed in Yannick's yard with surprising grace, and on its back, laughing with pure joy, was Grokha. She slid down from Skyripper's back, and Yannick saw she had braided her hair differently, woven with small blue beads that matched the leather jerkin she wore. She looked vital and beautiful, and Yannick's heart kicked against his ribs. "I know I am a day early," she called out, grinning. But Skyripper was restless, and I found I could not wait. Yannick crossed the yard in long strides, and before he could think better of it, he pulled her into a hug. She was solid and warm against him, smelling of leather and pine and something spicy he could not identify. After a moment of surprise, her arms came around him, returning the embrace with enough strength to lift him slightly off his feet. "I am glad you came early," he said into her shoulder. "I have been counting the days." When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Skyripper made a curious sound, head tilting as he examined Yannick with intelligent amber eyes. "He wants to know if you are safe," Grokha translated. "War beasts are very protective of their riders." Yannick approached slowly, using the same calm energy he had with Grimjaw. Skyripper's nostrils flared, scenting him, and then the war beast did something unexpected. He lowered his head in what looked like a bow. Grokha's mouth fell open. "By the ancestors, he is showing submission." "Skyripper does not do that for anyone but me." "I think he smells Grimjaw on me," Yannick said, reaching out to touch the scales along Skyripper's neck. They were cooler than Grimjaw's, smoother, almost like polished stone. "He knows I am a friend. It is more than that." Grokha moved to stand beside him, her hand joining his on Skyripper's scales. "War beasts are excellent judges of character. If Skyripper trusts you this quickly, it means he senses something in you that resonates with him. Strength, maybe, or kindness, or both." Their hands were touching again, and this time neither of them pulled away. Yannick became acutely aware of how close Grokha was standing, how easy it would be to turn. "And where is Shadowfang?" he asked, forcing his thoughts back to safer ground. "Hunting. He will be here by evening." Grokha's thumb traced a small circle on the back of his hand, a gesture so casual she might not even realize she was doing it. "I hope you do not mind housing all three of us for a few days. I thought we could work on your war beast training in earnest. I would like nothing more. Come on, let me show you the paddock I prepared." He had done good work, he was proud to see. The new enclosure was large, with a shelter built into one corner and a water trough fed by a diverted stream. Grokha walked the perimeter, testing the fence posts, examining the setup with a critical eye. "This is excellent craftsmanship," she said finally. "You did all this yourself." "I had a lot of free time and a lot of things I did not want to think about." She gave him a knowing look. "I understand that impulse. After I left my clan, I spent 6 months building my homestead, working from dawn to dusk until I was too tired to question my choices. Did it work? Eventually. Once I realized I was not running from my clan but toward something new." She leaned against the fence, looking out at the mountains in the distance. "Coming here, meeting you, I think that is part of what I was moving toward." Yannick's breath caught. "Grokha, I know it is strange. We barely know each other." She turned to face him, and there was vulnerability in her eyes that made his chest ache. "But I have not been able to stop thinking about you, about how you stood between me and those militia men without hesitation. How you calmed Grimjaw with just your voice and your hands. How you treated me like a person instead of a monster." "You are a person," Yannick said fiercely. "Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. Most humans think otherwise. Even other orcs would say I am a traitor for seeking peace with your kind." She pushed away from the fence, beginning to pace. "But when I am with you, none of that seems to matter. I feel like I can just be Grokha, not an orc or a beast master or a symbol of anything. Just myself." Yannick caught her hand as she paced past him, pulling her to a stop. "I feel the same way. These past 2 weeks, I have felt more alive than I have in years. And I think it is because I spent one day with someone who actually saw me, who I did not have to pretend around." They stood there, hands clasped, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Skyriper watched them with what looked like approval, making a soft chirping sound. "So what do we do about this?" Grokha asked quietly. "I think we see where it goes. You stay here for a few days. We work together, talk together, figure out if this feeling is real or just the result of a dramatic first meeting. And if it is real," Yannick squeezed her hand, "then we figure that out too, together." Grokha's smile was like sunrise. "I would like that." They spent the rest of the afternoon settling Skyriper into the new paddock and preparing for Shadowfang's arrival. Grokha told stories about her war beasts, how she had found each of them as young creatures, orphaned or abandoned, and raised them herself. How Grimjaw had been the first, a gift from her mother before the clan split over the raiding issue. How Shadowfang had nearly died from an infected wound before Grokha learned enough herbalism to heal him. How Skyriper had chosen her, diving from a mountain nest to land at her feet when she was at her lowest point, freshly exiled and alone. "They are not pets or tools," she said as they worked. "They are family, the only family I have left." "Not the only family," Yannick said. "Not anymore." The look she gave him was so full of hope and gratitude that he had to turn away, suddenly overwhelmed by the intensity of what was building between them. Shadowfang arrived as promised, slinking out of the forest like a living shadow. He was the smallest of the three war beasts, built lean and low to the ground, with dark scales that seemed to absorb light. His eyes were silver instead of amber, and they fixed on Yannick with predatory focus. "He is the most cautious," Grokha warned. "Let him come to you in his own time." But Shadowfang surprised them both. After circling Yannick twice, the war beast approached and butted his head against Yannick's knee, then moved on to investigate the paddock with apparent satisfaction. "Unbelievable," Grokha muttered. "It took him 6 months to trust me that much." "Maybe he knows I have venison," Yannick suggested, grinning. "Maybe he knows you are something special." They fed the war beasts together, working in comfortable synchrony. Grokha showed Yannick the specific dietary needs of each creature, how much to feed them, what supplements to add to their water. She demonstrated the commands she used, both verbal and gestural, and had him practice until the beasts responded to his voice as readily as they did to hers. "You have a real gift for this," she said as they watched Skyriper execute a complex aerial maneuver at Yannick's command. "In orc clans, only 1 in 20 warriors has the temperament to become a beast master. You would have been selected immediately. I learned from my father that any animal will respond to clear communication and genuine respect. The specific species does not matter as much as the approach. Your father must have been an extraordinary man." He was. Yannick felt the familiar ache of loss, but softer now, more bittersweet than painful. "I think he would have liked you, because I am an orc who defied her clan." Grokha raised an eyebrow. "Because you are someone who chose her own path instead of the one others demanded." He always valued that kind of courage. That evening they cooked together again, this time a more elaborate meal: roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and a rich stew that filled the house with savory aromas. Grokha moved around Yannick's kitchen as if she had always been there, anticipating what he needed before he asked, falling into an easy rhythm that felt achingly domestic. After dinner, they sat on the porch Yannick had built, watching the stars emerge one by one. The war beasts were settled in the paddock, their breathing soft and steady. Everything felt peaceful in a way Yannick had not experienced since before his father's death. "Tell me about your homestead," he said. "What is it like?" Grokha's face softened. "Small but comfortable." "I have a garden where I grow vegetables and herbs, a smokehouse for preserving meat, a workshop where I make my own leather goods. The river is close enough that I can fish whenever I want. There is a hot spring nearby where I bathe. It is simple, but it is mine. It sounds wonderful. It is. But it is also lonely. She looked at him, starlight reflected in her yellow eyes. I tell myself I am fine alone, that I chose this life and I should be content with it. But then I come here and spend time with you, and I realize how much I have been missing. How good it feels to share meals with someone, to work alongside someone who understands what I am trying to do, to just talk and laugh and not be alone. Yannick's hand found hers on the bench between them. I know exactly what you mean. I have been telling myself the same lies about being fine alone. So what do we do tonight? Nothing. We just sit here and enjoy this moment. He turned his head to look at her. Tomorrow we keep learning about each other. We take it slow, because we both know what it is like to rush into things for the wrong reasons, and we see if this is something that can last. And if it is, then we figure out what that looks like, how to make it work when humans and orcs are not supposed to care about each other. When you have a homestead 2 days away and I have a ranch here, when the entire world will tell us this is impossible, Grokha's grip on his hand tightened. I have faced impossible odds before, so have I. Yannick smiled. I think we might be stubborn enough to make this work. They sat there until the moon rose, talking about everything and nothing, childhood memories, dreams for the future, the small details of daily life that you only share with someone you trust. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the distance between them closed until Grokha's head was resting on Yannick's shoulder and his arm was around her waist. It felt right. It felt like home. The next 4 days passed in a haze of contentment. Yannick taught Grokha the finer points of horse training, showing her how to read the subtle shifts in an animal's body language, how to use voice and posture to communicate without force. Grokha taught him war beast handling, the commands, the philosophy, the bond that had to be forged between master and creature for the partnership to work. They worked from dawn until dusk, breaking only for meals they prepared together. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch or walk through the pine forest surrounding the ranch, talking until the stars came out. Each night, the space between them grew smaller, the touches more frequent and more lingering, until on the 4th night, Yannick finally kissed her. It happened spontaneously, without planning. They were by the barn, checking on the war beasts one last time before bed, and Grokha said something that made him laugh. When he turned to respond, she was right there, so close he could see the flecks of gold in her yellow eyes. The words died on his lips, and suddenly kissing her was the only thing that made sense. Her tusks were small enough that they did not interfere, though Yannick had to angle his head slightly. Her lips were soft, her response immediate and eager. One of her hands came up to cup his face while the other gripped his shoulder, pulling him closer. Yannick wrapped his arms around her waist, marveling at her strength, at how perfectly she fit against him despite their difference in height. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grokha rested her forehead against his. That gesture he had come to understand was deeply significant in orc culture, a sign of trust and intimacy. I have wanted to do that since the day we met, she confessed. I have wanted you to do that since the day we met, Yannick replied, and she laughed, the sound rich and full of joy. They kissed again, slower this time, exploring. Yannick learned the shape of her mouth, the way she sighed when he trailed his lips along her jaw, the places that made her grip him tighter. Grokha was not hesitant or shy. She kissed like she did everything else, with complete commitment and fierce passion. Eventually, reluctantly, they pulled apart. I should go to bed, Grokha said, though she made no move to step away. Before I forget myself entirely. Would that be so bad? No, but I want to do this right. You deserve that, we both do. She cupped his face with both hands. I am falling in love with you, Yannick Thorne. I want to take the time to let that happen properly, not rush it because my blood is up, and you are the first person in years who has made me feel truly seen. Yannick covered her hands with his own. I am falling in love with you too, Grokha. And you are right, we should take our time, he smiled. But I reserve the right to kiss you goodnight every evening from now on. I think I can accept those terms. They kissed once more, chaste and sweet, before reluctantly separating. Yannick watched Grokha walk back to the house, admiring the strength in her movements, the confidence she carried in her body. He was so lost in thought that he did not notice Shadowfang had approached until the war beast nudged his shoulder. I know, Yannick said, scratching behind the creature's ear ridges. I am in trouble, the best kind of trouble. Shadowfang made a sound that might have been agreement. The trouble started the next morning. Yannick and Grokha were in the paddock, working with Grimjaw on some advanced commands, when Samuel Garrett rode up with 4 militia men. The militia captain's face was hard as stone, and every man had a crossbow loaded and ready. Step away from the orc, Thorne, Samuel called out. Yannick felt Grokha tense beside him, saw her hand move toward her axe. He caught her wrist gently, shaking his head. Then he walked to the fence, deliberately placing himself between the militia and Grokha. Samuel, what brings you out here? Had some reports that you were harboring an orc and multiple war beasts on your property. Came to verify and, if necessary, enforce the settlement's ordinances about dangerous creatures within 5 miles of town. Those ordinances exempt working animals, which you know perfectly well since your own horses fall under that exemption. These war beasts are no more dangerous than the horses I train, less so, in fact, since they are far better trained. They are monsters, one of the other militiamen spat. Just like the greenskin. Yannick's hands clenched on the fence rail, but he kept his voice level. The only monsters I see are the men pointing weapons at someone who has done nothing wrong. She is an orc, Samuel said, as if that explained everything, and you are consorting with her. People are talking, Thorne, saying you have been corrupted, that you are not to be trusted. I am giving you a chance to make this right. Send her away, destroy those beasts, and maybe we can forget this happened. No, Samuel's expression hardened. That was not a request. And that was not a negotiation. Yannick straightened to his full height. Grokha is my guest. Her war beasts are under my protection. If you want to do something about that, you will have to go through me. Do not be a fool. There are 5 of us and 1 of you. 6 of us, Grokha called out, moving to stand beside Yannick at the fence. Behind her, Grimjaw, Shadowfang, and Skyripper had arranged themselves in a defensive line, scales gleaming in the morning sun. And if you think Yannick is the only one you would have to go through, you are welcome to test that theory. The war beasts made no aggressive moves, but their presence was undeniable. Grimjaw alone could have torn through the militia in seconds. Add in Shadowfang's speed and Skyripper's aerial advantage, and the outcome was not in question. Samuel knew it too. His jaw worked silently, his knuckles white on his crossbow. You are making a serious mistake, Thorne, he said finally. When this goes badly, and it will do not come crying to the settlement for help. I will not need your help. Now get off my land. The militia rode away, but Yannick knew this was far from over. He turned to find Grokha watching him with an expression he could not quite read. You should not have done that, she said quietly. You should have sent me away, protected yourself. You actually think I would do that? You have a life here, Yannick. A reputation, a business. You are throwing it all away for someone you have known less than a month. I am not throwing anything away, I am choosing what matters. He took her hands. Grokha, I meant what I said about falling in love with you. That means I do not abandon you when things get difficult. That means I stand with you always. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You are an idiot." "Probably. A wonderful, brave, ridiculous idiot." She pulled him into a fierce embrace. "What are we going to do? We figure it out. Together. Remember." Over the next few days, the consequences of Yannick's defiance became clear. People who had been friendly turned cold. Orders for horse training were cancelled. When Yannick rode into Thorndale for supplies, merchants refused to serve him or charged double the normal prices. Children threw stones at him from behind their parents' legs. The message was clear. Choose the orc and lose your place in human society. Yannick had expected this, but it still stung. He had worked hard to build a new life in Thorndale, and watching it crumble because of prejudice and fear left him angry and bitter. But Grokha was there, steady and strong. She helped him with the increased workload as clients abandoned him. She sat with him in the evenings when the isolation got to be too much. She reminded him, with her presence and her touch and her words, why he had made this choice. "You could still change your mind," she said one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Send me away. Make your peace with the settlement. Go back to your life. This is my life now." Yannick kissed her temple. "You, me, 3 war beasts and a ranch that is slowly going under because my neighbors are small-minded fools. Honestly, it is kind of perfect." She laughed despite herself. "How can you joke about this?" "Because the alternative is despair, and I am too stubborn for that." He turned her face toward him. "Grokha, I have lost everything before. I know what that feels like. This is not losing. This is choosing. And I would make the same choice every day for the rest of my life. Even if it means losing your ranch, your home. A home is not about the place. It is about the people." He kissed her softly. "And you are my home now." Grokha's arms came around him, holding him with a fierceness that spoke of things words could not capture. They stayed like that until the stars came out, 2 people against a world that did not want them to exist. The crisis came 3 weeks after Grokha's arrival. Yannick was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when he heard horses approaching at a gallop. He dropped his pitchfork and ran outside to find a rider wearing the colors of the provincial governor, a young woman with terror in her eyes. "Yannick Thorne," she gasped, nearly falling from her saddle. "That is me. What is wrong, raiders? At least 30 of them heading for Thorndale. The militia is outnumbered and outmatched. We sent to the garrison for help, but they are 2 days away." She grabbed his arm. "They said you used to be a fighter, that you took down a gang single-handed. We need you. Everyone who can hold a weapon." Yannick's blood ran cold. Raiders. Just like the ones who had killed his father, burned his home, destroyed his old life. For a moment he was 19 again, standing in the ashes and swearing vengeance. "I will get my weapons," he heard himself say. "No." He turned to find Grokha standing in the barn doorway, her face set with determination. "Grokha, no," she repeated. "I heard what she said. 30 raiders against a settlement militia that probably numbers 20 at most. You go there, you die. I will not let that happen. People will die if I do not help. People who turned their backs on you, who threw stones and called you an orc lover and tried to run me out of town." Grokha crossed her arms. "Why should you risk your life for them? Because they do not deserve to be slaughtered just because they are ignorant." Yannick moved toward the house where his weapons were stored. "And because letting innocent people die when I can help goes against everything I believe." Grokha caught his arm. "Then I am coming with you." "Absolutely not. Do not even try that with me, Yannick Thorne. You think I will sit here safe while you ride to probable death. You think I do not know how to fight." Her eyes blazed. "I was part of an orc war band for 5 years. I have probably killed more people in battle than you have seen in your entire life. That is exactly why I do not want you there. You should not have to go back to that. And you should. She cupped his face with both hands. We are in this together, remember. That means I do not let you face danger alone. The settlement will not even want your help. They will probably shoot at you. Then they are idiots. But that is their problem, not ours. She kissed him hard. I have 3 war beasts and extensive combat experience. You would be a fool to turn that down. Yannick looked at the messenger who had been watching this exchange with wide eyes. Can the militia work with an orc and war beasts? Right now, we would work with demons from the deepest hell if they could fight, the woman said bluntly. You bring what you have and we will figure it out. Yannick turned back to Grokha. Are you sure about this? No, but I am sure about you, and that is enough. They moved with swift efficiency, gathering weapons and armor. Yannick strapped on the sword belt he had not worn in 3 years, the weight of it familiar and terrible. Grokha donned her full battle armor, transforming from the woman he had grown to love into something fierce and deadly, a warrior of the Stonefist clan. She gave commands to her war beasts in their language, and they responded instantly, falling into formation. Grimjaw in the lead, massive and unstoppable. Shadowfang ranging to the side, built for speed and flanking attacks. Skyripper taking to the air, ready to dive and strike from above. We are going to save a town that hates us, Yannick said as they mounted their horses. The messenger had brought a spare for him. Yes, Grokha agreed. They probably will not even thank us. Probably not. We are doing it anyway. Of course we are. That is what good people do. She reached across the space between their horses and squeezed his hand. Whatever happens, I am glad I met you, Yannick Thorne. I am glad I met you too, he squeezed back. Now let us go save some ungrateful humans. The ride to Thorndale took less than an hour, pushing the horses hard. They could see smoke on the horizon before they arrived, smell burning wood on the wind. The messenger led them around to the eastern approach, where Samuel Garrett had set up a defensive line on the outskirts of town. The militia captain's face went through a series of complicated expressions when he saw Yannick and Grokha riding toward him with 3 war beasts in tow. Surprise, anger, suspicion, and finally desperate calculation. I need every fighter I can get, Samuel said without preamble. Can you control those creatures in battle? Better than you control your own men, Grokha replied coolly. Where do you need us? Samuel swallowed whatever pride he had left and pointed to the southern edge of the defensive line. Raiders are hitting us from 3 sides. The south is our weakest point, only 6 men holding a line that should have 15. If they break through there, they can cut into the town center where we have the civilians sheltered. We will hold the south, Yannick said. How long until the garrison arrives? Optimistically. 36 hours. Realistically, we are on our own. Then we had better make every hour count. They rode to the southern line where 6 exhausted militiamen were trying to hold back what looked like at least a dozen raiders. The attackers were a mix of human and orc deserters, the kind of scum who preyed on frontier settlements too far from major cities to have proper protection. Yannick and Grokha dismounted, sending their horses back toward the town center where they would be safe. The war beasts took up positions along the defensive line, and the effect on the raiders was immediate and satisfying. They had been pressing forward confidently, but the sight of Grimjaw's massive form made them pull back, reassessing. What the hell are you doing here? One of the militiamen asked a young man Yannick recognized from the market. And why is there an orc on our side? Right now, I am the difference between you living to see tomorrow and becoming a corpse, Grokha said pleasantly. Do you really want to debate the details? The raiders did not give them time to argue further. A group of 6 charged the line, screaming war cries. Grimjaw met them head-on, his massive jaws snapping. 2 raiders went down immediately while the others scattered. Shadowfang moved like liquid darkness, hamstringing one man and pouncing on another before they could react. Skyriper dove from above, talons raking across an enemy's back, then swooping back up out of range. Yannick fought with the sword skills his father had taught him, enhanced by the brutal efficiency he had learned hunting raiders. He was not as good as he had once been. 3 years of peace had softened him slightly, but he was good enough. A raider came at him with an axe, and Yannick sidestepped, letting the man's momentum carry him past, then struck with his sword pommel to the base of the skull. The raider dropped without a sound, but it was Grokha who truly shone. She fought with the disciplined ferocity of a trained warrior, her axe moving in economical arcs that wasted no motion. She did not fight like she was trying to kill, she fought like she was solving a problem, taking each opponent out of the fight with the minimum necessary force. It was beautiful and terrible to watch. The raiders' first charge broke against their defense. The second came an hour later, better organized, and Yannick took a knife wound to his shoulder that burned like fire. Grokha was at his side instantly, pulling him back while Grimjaw covered their retreat. "How bad?" she demanded, examining the wound. "Not deep. I can still fight." She tore a strip from her tunic and bound the wound with quick, competent movements. "You are staying back for the next wave. Let the beasts take the front line." "Grokha, that was not a suggestion." Her eyes were fierce. "I will not watch you bleed out because you are too stubborn to admit you are hurt." Yannick wanted to argue, but she was right. The wound was not serious, but it would slow him down, make him clumsy. Better to support from the second line. The battle continued through the afternoon and into the evening. Wave after wave of raiders threw themselves at the defenses, and each time the line held barely. The militiamen, who had started the day looking at Grokha with suspicion and disgust, were now taking orders from her without question. She had a tactical mind that saw patterns in the chaos, predicted enemy movements, positioned the war beasts and fighters for maximum effectiveness. By midnight, the raiders pulled back to regroup. Yannick slumped against a section of barricade, exhausted and hurting. Grokha sat beside him, cleaning blood from her axe. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "Thank you," Samuel Garrett said, appearing out of the darkness. His face was haggard, covered in soot and dirt. "I do not understand you, and I sure as hell do not like you consorting with an orc. But you saved lives today, a lot of lives. That matters." "Will it matter tomorrow?" Grokha asked quietly. "When this is over and your people go back to hating us?" Samuel looked away. "I cannot speak for everyone, but I will remember, and I will make sure others do too." He straightened. "Get some rest. We have 4 hours until dawn, when they will probably hit us again." After he left, Yannick leaned his head on Grokha's shoulder. "You were right. They are not going to thank us." Samuel just did in his way. "That is more than I expected." She wrapped an arm around him carefully, avoiding his wounded shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got stabbed and then spent 12 hours fighting for my life. So not great. Try to sleep." "I will keep watch." "Not without me, you will not." They dozed in shifts, leaning on each other, surrounded by the sounds of other fighters doing the same. The war beasts formed a protective circle around them, and Yannick felt absurdly safe despite the circumstances. Dawn came with blood-red light and another raider assault. This one was different, coordinated, professional, hitting all 3 sides of the defense at once. The militia line bent, held, bent further. On the southern approach, Yannick and Grokha fought side by side, moving with the kind of synchrony that only came from deep trust. A raider broke through the line, heading for the town center. Skyriper dove at Grokha's command, but the raider was ready, rolling under the war beast's talons and coming up with a spear aimed at Skyriper's vulnerable underbelly. Yannick moved without thinking, his sword flashing out to deflect the spear. The raider turned on him, and they exchanged a flurry of blows. Yannick's wounded shoulder slowed him just enough that the raider got inside his guard, blade driving toward his chest. Grokha's axe took the raider's head off in a single swing. She caught Yannick as he stumbled, holding him upright. "Are you hurt?" "No, just clumsy." He looked at the headless corpse. "You did not have to kill him. He was about to kill you. I absolutely did have to kill him." Her voice shook slightly. "I know you do not like killing. I know you came out here trying to avoid it. But in battle, sometimes there is no other choice. I know. I just hate that you had to be the one to make that choice. Better me than losing you." She pulled him close, and he could feel her heart pounding against his chest. "I love you, Yannick. I am not losing you to some raider's blade." "I love you too." He kissed her, brief and fierce, right there in the middle of the battlefield with chaos all around them. "Now let us finish this so we can go home." The final assault came at noon, when the raiders threw everything they had left at the weakest parts of the defense. But by then, reinforcements had arrived from outlying farms, and the balance had shifted. The militia now, including Yannick, Grokha, and the war beasts, pushed back hard, breaking the raiders' formation. When the enemy finally retreated for good, disappearing into the forest with the militia harrying their heels, a ragged cheer went up from the defenders. Yannick and Grokha did not cheer. They simply held each other, grateful to be alive. The garrison arrived 6 hours later, but by then, it was over. The commander took statements, commended the militia's bravery, and very deliberately included Grokha in his praise, making it clear that her contribution was recognized and valued. "You fought with honor," the commander said to her. "If you ever want a position with the provincial forces, we could use warriors like you." "I appreciate the offer," Grokha replied, "but I have other commitments." She looked at Yannick as she said it, and the commander's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing, just nodded and moved on. They stayed long enough to help with the wounded and ensure the town's defenses were solid. Then, as the sun began to set, they gathered their war beasts and prepared to leave. Samuel Garrett stopped them at the edge of town. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Back to my ranch," Yannick said. "Or what is left of it after I have been blacklisted for the past month." Samuel looked uncomfortable. "About that. The council met this afternoon. Given what you did, how you fought for people who treated you badly, they have agreed to restore your standing in the community. Cancel the blacklist. You can do business in Thorndale again. And Grokha, she fought for us too. She is welcome here. So are her war beasts." Samuel paused. "I am not saying everyone will be happy about it, but they will have to accept it, and anyone who starts trouble will answer to me." It was more than Yannick had expected, and the surprise must have shown on his face because Samuel almost smiled. "You made your choice when you stood up for her against my men. You did not have to come help us. The fact that you did, that you risked your life for people who threw stones at you, that says something about your character, both of you." He extended his hand. "Thank you, and I am sorry for how we treated you." Yannick shook his hand. So did Grokha, though her grip was careful, mindful of her greater strength. They rode back to the ranch in companionable silence, exhaustion weighing on them both. The war beasts were tired too, moving slowly, ready for rest and food. When the ranch finally came into view, Yannick felt tension drain from his shoulders that he had not even realized he was carrying. Home. They were home. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Yannick's business did come back, though some people were more enthusiastic about it than others. More importantly, a few of the braver souls from Thorndale started coming to the ranch to learn about war beasts, fascinated by Grokha's knowledge and skill. She turned out to be an excellent teacher, patient and clear in her explanations. Watching her work with eager students, seeing the way their initial fear transformed into respect and then genuine interest, filled Yannick with pride and love so strong it almost hurt. They settled into a rhythm, Grokha spending half her time at the ranch and half at her homestead, with Yannick joining her there whenever he could spare the time. They talked about building something more permanent, a place that belonged to both of them. But for now, the arrangement worked. One evening, 6 months after the battle, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Grokha said, "I have been thinking." "Dangerous habit," Yannick teased. She swatted his arm. "Be serious. I have been thinking about what we talked about making this more permanent." Yannick's heart kicked against his ribs. "What did you have in mind?" In Orc culture, when two people want to commit to each other, they perform a bonding ceremony. It is not quite the same as human marriage, but it serves a similar purpose. A public declaration that you belong together, that you will face the world as a single unit. I like the sound of that. But we are not just two orcs. We are orc and human, which means we will face challenges that most couples do not: prejudice, legal complications, questions about where we belong. She took his hand. "I need to know you are ready for that you understand what you are signing up for. Grokha, I chose you the day I stood between you and a dozen armed men. I chose you every day afterward when the town turned their backs on me. I chose you when I rode into battle knowing I might die." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I am not going to suddenly change my mind now. And if your family objects, if the human authorities refuse to recognize our bond, then they can go to hell. You are my family now. You and the war beasts and whatever life we build together, that is all that matters." Grokha's eyes were bright with tears. "You are sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Grokha, will you bond with me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that humans and orcs can build something beautiful together?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." She pulled him into a kiss that tasted of salt and joy and promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like idiots. "So how does this bonding ceremony work?" Yannick asked. "Well, traditionally, it involves ritual combat, blood oaths, and surviving a night in the wilderness with only each other for protection." Yannick blinked. "That sounds intense." "It is, but we can adapt it. Make it something that honors both our cultures." She grinned. "Though I am keeping the part about ritual combat, I want to see if you can beat me in a fair fight. You want to fight me as part of our bonding ceremony. It is symbolic, proving we are each strong enough to stand beside the other. That neither of us is weak or helpless." She traced a finger down his jaw. "Do not worry, I will go easy on you." Oh, now it is on. They spent the next month planning their ceremony, combining orc traditions with human elements to create something uniquely theirs. They would exchange vows at sunset, witnessed by both war beasts and horses. They would fight, though Grokha promised it would be more sparring than actual combat. And they would spend the night under the stars, no shelter except each other, talking until dawn about the life they would build. Samuel Garrett agreed to serve as witness from the human side, a gesture that meant more than Yannick could express. From the orc side, Grokha sent word to her former clan, not really expecting anyone to come. To her surprise, her mother arrived 3 days before the ceremony, traveling alone, risking her own exile to be there for her daughter. Masha was even taller than Grokha, her tusks more pronounced, her black hair shot through with silver. She looked at Yannick with eyes that could have been carved from amber and said, "You are the human my daughter has chosen." "I am. If that is acceptable to you." "Acceptable." Masha's laugh was surprisingly warm. "Boy, my daughter defied our entire clan to follow her conscience." You think I am going to object because you are human. I am just glad she found someone who appreciates her strength instead of fearing it. Grokha's reunion with her mother was tearful and joyful, and Yannick gave them space to reconnect. But later, Masha pulled him aside. "Take care of her," the orc woman said quietly. "Grokha acts tough, but she has been hurt deeply by the people who should have supported her. She needs someone who will stand beside her always. Can you do that?" "For the rest of my life," Yannick promised. "Good. Because if you hurt her, I will track you down and feed you to my war beasts piece by piece." "Understood." Masha grinned, showing all her tusks. "I like you. You have spine. Not many humans would stand up to an orc mother defending her cub." The ceremony took place on a perfect autumn evening, the sky painted in shades of amber and gold. They had cleared a space near the barn, decorated it with wildflowers and symbols from both their cultures. The war beasts were arranged in a semicircle, with the horses in the paddocks looking on curiously. Samuel and a handful of townsfolk stood to one side, while Masha represented the orc presence. Yannick wore his best clothes, simple but clean. Grokha wore traditional orc battle garb, but she had woven flowers into her braid, a human touch that made his heart swell. They faced each other as the sun began to set. "I am Yannick Thorne," he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. "Son of Marcus Thorne, horse master of the Eastern Valleys. I come before witnesses to declare my bond with Grokha of the Stonefist clan. I promise to stand beside her in times of joy and hardship, to honor her strength and support her dreams, to face the world together as partners and equals." Grokha's turn. "I am Grokha, formerly of the Stonefist clan, now of no clan but my own choosing. I come before witnesses to declare my bond with Yannick Thorne. I promise to stand beside him in times of peace and conflict, to honor his courage and share his burdens, to face the world together as partners and equals." Then came the sparring. It was not meant to be serious, just a demonstration of mutual respect and capability. But both of them were competitive enough that it quickly became more intense, drawing appreciative sounds from the watching crowd. Yannick moved with the grace his father had taught him, but Grokha had reach and strength on her side. They circled each other, exchanging quick strikes that never quite connected, until finally Yannick managed to sweep her legs out from under her. She went down laughing, pulling him down with her so they ended in a tangle of limbs. "I let you win that," she whispered in his ear. "Sure you did." They helped each other up, and Masha stepped forward to tie their wrists together with a braided cord, green for Grokha's orcish heritage, brown for Yannick's connection to the earth and animals. "You are bonded," Masha declared, "in the eyes of the ancestors and the witnesses gathered here. May your union bring strength to you both." Samuel stepped forward as well, producing a simple contract he had drawn up. "In the eyes of the provincial law, you are recognized as a bonded pair with all the rights and responsibilities therein. Sign here." They signed, still bound at the wrist, their signatures tangling together on the page, and just like that they were married. Bonded. United. The celebration that followed was small but heartfelt. They shared food and drink, told stories, listened to Masha recount tales of Grokha's childhood that made the orc woman groan with embarrassment. As night fell, lanterns were lit, and someone produced a fiddle, filling the air with music. Yannick danced with his wife. Under the stars, aware that this was a moment he would remember for the rest of his life. Grokha in his arms, laughing and beautiful, surrounded by people who had learned to see past their own prejudices to witness something good. Later, after the guests had departed and they were alone under the vast expanse of stars, Grokha said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me when no one else would. for standing beside me when it would have been easier to turn away, for choosing this life even though it will never be easy." She cupped his face with both hands. "I love you, Yannick Thorne. I will spend every day of my life proving I am worthy of the faith you placed in me." "You already have," he said softly. "From the moment you ran after Grimjaw, trying to protect him from people who wanted him dead, I knew you were someone extraordinary. Everything since has just confirmed it." They made love under the stars, slow and tender, a physical expression of the vows they had just spoken. Afterward, they lay wrapped in blankets, talking about the future they would build, the ranch they would expand, the war beasts they would train, the prejudices they would chip away at one day at a time. "You think it will always be this hard?" Grokha asked, her head on his chest. "Fighting for acceptance, proving we deserve to exist, probably. But we will face it together, and slowly we will change minds. The people in Thorndale already see you differently than they did 6 months ago. That is progress, slow progress, the best kind, the kind that lasts." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Besides, I have you and 3 war beasts. I am pretty sure we can handle whatever comes our way." She laughed, the sound warm in content. "I suppose we can." They fell asleep like that, under the stars, their future spreading out before them like an unwritten story, one they would write together, with courage and love and the unwavering belief that the world could be better than it was. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. Yannick and Grokha built their ranch into something remarkable, a place where both horses and war beasts were trained with equal respect, where humans and orcs could learn from each other. More interspecies couples began to emerge in the region, emboldened by Yannick and Grokha's example. Prejudice did not disappear, but it softened, slowly giving ground to understanding. Samuel Garrett became an unlikely ally and friend, using his position to advocate for fairer treatment of orcs in the settlement. Masha visited regularly, bringing news from the orc clans and pride in her daughter's accomplishments. Some of Grokha's former clanmates began to trickle in, curious about the life she had built, wondering if perhaps there was another way forward besides endless conflict. And through it all, Yannick and Grokha faced each challenge together: droughts and hard winters, difficult clients and dangerous situations, the everyday struggles of building a life on the frontier. But they also had the quiet joys. Mornings spent training animals they both loved, evenings on the porch watching sunsets, nights in each other's arms where the rest of the world fell away. 5 years after their bonding, as they watched Grimjaw teach a new generation of war beasts the commands Yannick had perfected, Grokha said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you did not just tame my war beast that afternoon. I think you tamed me too." Yannick laughed. "You are not tameable. You are too wild, too fierce, too gloriously yourself. Maybe that is what taming really means. Not breaking someone's spirit, but giving them a safe place to be themselves fully." She leaned against him. "You gave me that. A place where I did not have to be an orc warrior or a beast master or anything except Grokha. Just myself." "You gave me the same thing," Yannick said quietly. "A place where I could stop running from my past and start building something new, a reason to believe in people again. So I suppose we saved each other." "I suppose we did." They stood there together, watching their war beasts and horses graze side by side in the paddock, the sun setting behind the mountains in a blaze of color. And Yannick thought about how one afternoon of choosing courage over fear, compassion over prejudice, had changed the entire course of his life. He had tamed her war beast. She had said she had to keep him. And in keeping each other, they had found something neither had been looking for but both had desperately needed. A home, a partner, a love that transcended the boundaries the world tried to impose. It was not the life either of them had imagined. It was better. Harder, messier, more complicated, but infinitely richer for all of that. Years later, when travelers asked Yannick how he had ended up bonded to an orc woman running a war beast ranch on the frontier, he would smile and tell them about an afternoon when he stood his ground instead of running, when he chose to help instead of looking away, when he saw a person instead of a monster. And when they asked Grokha the same question, she would grin and say, "He tamed my war beast in one afternoon. After that, I had no choice but to keep him. Best decision I ever made. Because love, real love, was not about taming or being tamed. It was about finding someone who saw you completely, all your strength and all your vulnerability, all your courage and all your fear, and chose to stand beside you anyway. Someone who faced the world with you as a partner, an equal, a companion in all the wild, beautiful chaos of living." Yannick and Grokha had found that in each other. And in finding it, they had built something that would last far beyond their own lives, a legacy of courage, compassion, and the stubborn belief that love could bridge any divide, overcome any prejudice, and create beauty in the most unexpected places. Their story became legend in the region, told and retold until fact blurred with fiction. But the truth at the heart of it remained simple and powerful. Two people from different worlds who chose each other, and in that choosing, changed everything. And they lived happily ever after, in their ranch on the frontier, with their war beasts and horses, and the love they had built together strong enough to weather any storm, tender enough to heal old wounds, and wild enough to never be anything less than extraordinary.